you join me today in my new to me Lamborghini Gallardo LP570-4 Superleggera Edizione Tecnica.
Racing to the finish line, seatbelt, fast whips, got a win in mind.
Oh, those Corsa shifts! Woo! Now, today is my first proper drive in this car for various reasons, which I'll explain in a moment. But since I've got a slightly drier road than before, I'm actually going to make the most of it. This car is good. This car is good. And if you've been following the channel, you'll know that I've also got an Audi R8 GT Spider, also a V10. If you know the GTs, they only came in a V10. And you might be wondering, why did I get this car as well as that one? Why not get something completely different? Well, actually, you'd be surprised at how different these cars are. But I'm going to make a whole video explaining every aspect of the differences between the R8 and the Gallardo. There were much more similarities between the second gen R8 and the Huracan, but actually quite a few big differences that really do change the way that these cars behave between the R8 first gen and the Gallardo. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. That's for another video. Today, I'm really here to take you on my first proper drive of this car. And it's my first proper drive for a few different reasons. One of them was the tyres. Now, the tyres that I got this car with were, let's just say, a little bit out of date. 2018 and 2017 were still, they were P0s, and even worse than that, they weren't even P0s all round, they were P0 Corsas at the front. So not only were they old, they were absolutely useless as soon as the weather turned for the winter, which is pretty much when I bought the car, just as the weather was turning. So I made two drives on those particular tyres. One was to bring it back from the dealership, and the other was to take it down to RE Performance for a PPI. Now, you can find out everything that was wrong with this car in another video. Check that out on the channel. Now, straight after that PPI, I changed the tyres and put these Michelin PS4Ss on them. And one of the reasons that I wanted to put the PS4S on there is because I wanted the tyres to be similar to the ones that I have on the R8. So when I do the comparison, it's not significantly different primarily because the tyres are different. It's different because the cars are different while being the same, but actually more different than you think. So once I got those Michelins on, the next drive I was going to do was actually with James on JM and Friends, the shared channel between Sports and Touring and JM on Cars. And on that channel, we were doing a series called Antonek's Car, and this was the finale. Unfortunately, the weather was atrocious that day. I mean, the roads were so damp and greasy. I really couldn't drive the car properly, and it got majorly filthy. So yeah, sorry about that when you're watching that video. So when filming that video, I couldn't really drive it properly because there just was virtually no grip, not to mention the fact the tyres were brand new and probably needed just a little bit of the surface scrubbed off, but I think that's probably taken care of now. Now, my reason for driving the car today is I'm taking the car to a company called Hilton & Moss, so we're going to store it for the winter. Now, what that involves is they clean the car, detail it, put it into a special drying area, then the car goes into its parking space, plugged into a trickle charger, covered up with a soft car cover, and basically hibernates for the winter. The other reason I'm driving the car is when I was filming the video on the JM and Friends channel, showing people what car I finally chose, I might have had the wrong settings on the exhaust cam, which unfortunately meant that it captured no exhaust sound, which is kind of the whole point of having an exhaust cam. So I had to fit a camera to the car to capture the exhaust note, plus the two external cameras, do a bit of a spirited drive that we can splice into this other video. Yep, that's right, with the magic of editing, not every part of the YouTube video is filmed on the same day at the same time. But I thought, you know what, this video could have a dual purpose, because when I also noticed that the roads were dry and I've got these nicely scrubbed in tyres, I thought this could be my first opportunity to drive this car properly. And it would be rude not to take you with me. So here we go. Well, I can tell you this car does not disappoint. Honestly, the roads aren't entirely as grippy as I would like, so I've not been able to fully utilize the car, but I can tell you that it is incredibly fun to drive. This car shifts, and I'm literally just, because I'm having to squeeze the throttle on, I'm feeling the traction kick in just slightly, so I'm having to sort of squeeze the throttle on. I'm only just about getting to full throttle before I have to lift off again, because the corners are coming at me so fast. And I think that is something to do with the speed of this car. It is noticeably faster than my R8 GT. Woo! Oh my God. You can feel absolutely everything through these front wheels. This is a whole different experience. Who says that a Lamborghini can't be a driver's car? Sorry, Chris Harris, I disagree. This is brilliant. Get it slowed down. Squeeze on the power. Whoa, Jesus, you can barely get the pedal to the floor before the corner already arrives. Oh, honestly, this is just another thing. Look, if you've watched the series on JM and Friends, you'll know that I drove a 720S. You'll also know that I've driven the Ferrari 296. And I'll be honest, I don't think I had as much fun in either of those two cars compared to this. Now, there might be something to do with the fact that this is mine, so maybe I'm driving it a little bit more, let's just say, liberally than I was those two cars, because again, they were on loan. I mean, I can't comment on how it performs in relation to a standard Gallardo because I've never driven one. But honestly, it's brilliant. Now, one of the things that was not standard on the Gallardo or the Superleggera were the carbon ceramics. However, this one does actually come with the carbon ceramics. I don't really know what it would cost to replace them, but fortunately, the ceramic discs do last considerably longer than steels. You know, some say up to 100,000 miles, so hopefully I won't have to replace them during my ownership. The only time you will expect to considerably reduce the performance of those carbon ceramics to the point where you'd have to replace them is if you've basically hammered them really hard on a track. And even then, they should take quite a few track days before they entirely give up. So I'm not expecting to have to worry too much about the carbon ceramic discs on this car. Touch wood, I should just be careful what I say just in case fate comes back to bite me in my backside. I tell you what, the difference between the ceramics and the steels is noticeable because I have driven a Superleggera with the steels and the ceramics, and this is noticeably different. It just feels like you've got a much more, I don't know, much more stopping power available to you, for one, and if I was to take it on track, I wouldn't have to worry too much about brake fade. So what else is adding to the driving experience in this car? Well, actually, one of the things that I really like are these paddles. Now, I've always preferred paddles that stay stationary with the wheel. So as you turn the wheel, the paddle is in the same place as your hand when you've got 1/4 to 3 hand position. Unfortunately, the Gallardo always came with stationary to the steering column paddles, and they were quite small ones as well. So that was fixed by the previous owner with these larger Aventador style all carbon fiber shifters, and honestly, they make a huge difference to the overall experience because when you are in a corner, you could just about reach back with your little finger and still actually be able to shift up or shift down. Honestly, it makes such a difference to the overall experience of the car. And speaking of shifting gears, now I've got the car in Corsa mode at the moment, and Corsa is what gives you those violent shifts. Now, I thought that that was actually due to a change in the gearbox map, but I found out recently from RE Performance that actually it's a change in the engine map. So I might actually do something about that for the R8 once it's in sport mode, give it a little bit of a more aggressive shift. Essentially, it just pulls a lot less torque, and that results in that heavier shift. Now, you don't want to do this all the time, obviously, because you know, all that load on your clutch is probably going to wear it out a bit faster. Sport mode is probably adequate for most needs, and when you're in sport mode, it's a little bit of a lazy shift, but it's okay. And when you're not in sport mode, then it's a much more sort of relaxed drive. Now, one of the things that I will go into in more detail in my video when I compare the R8 and this car is the behavior of the gearbox. Honestly, this thing is, I love it. I mean, sure, it's not as fast shifting as a DCT, and of course, sure, it's probably less comfortable when you're stop starting in traffic, because a DCT just kind of behaves more like an auto when you're in stop start traffic. But I've never had an experience where I have had this kind of kick with a gear shift, except for in single clutch boxes like this and in the Ferrari 430 Scuderia. And I can tell you the shifts in that, they're almost as fast as a DCT and just as violent as this. Oh, it's brilliant. You know, as you're just going along, the car gives you a lot of confidence, maybe a bit too much, but I'll tell you something, in the corners, it rotates so nicely. Oh my God, that's great. Oh, yes. It is just so twitchy and on edge. It just feels so raw. I can't believe I was thinking about buying a 720S. Yes, it's faster, but who cares? It doesn't have this drama. And when you think about how special this car is, the Superleggera, oh, it's a very special car. And then Edizione Tecnica, I'm told something like only 3 were even delivered to the UK. And somehow I managed to get my hands on one. It's just amazing. Honestly, I've been very fortunate to have tried a number of different cars to see which one I liked. I tried an Aston Martin, not just any Aston Martin, a resto-modded Aston Martin V8 Vantage with, you know, modern suspension and all sorts of other things done to it to make it a thrilling drive. And it really was a thrilling drive. And thanks, Richard at Challenge the Road, for letting me drive that. I went on to drive a Lotus Exige that had the Comatech upgrade to it, putting out, I think it was something like 460 horsepower, but in something that weighs basically 1,100 kilos. That was incredible. What else? The Ferrari 488, another stunning car to drive, a little bit more usable in more circumstances, but absolutely fantastic. And of course the 720S, which actually for the same reasons I'd say was actually a much more usable car in more situations. But I've never really been about having a car that's usable. I mean, my happy place is sort of bouncing along a bumpy road with suspension that's slightly too stiff, feeling like I'm in a race car. And I actually don't care about being comfortable. I'm just happy and engaged. I don't want to be bored cruising along in comfort. Oh yeah, I know. It sounds weird, but borderline masochistic, some might say, but that's just my thing. It's just the kind of cars that I really, really enjoy. And I think it's safe to say after today that I've confirmed that I definitely made the right choice. This car gives me the fizz more than any of the other cars did. And now that I've got it, I think my biggest problem is, will I ever be able to let it go? So thank you for joining me today on my first proper drive in the Lamborghini Gallardo LP570-4 Superleggera Edizione Tecnica. Yes, I'm going to say the full name every time. And if you want to follow my journey with this car, please do hit the like button so YouTube knows to show you more on your homepage. And of course, it will very much help me if you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon, choose notifications on all videos. And I'll see you next time on Sports and Touring.